Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, we invite you to join us on a journey through a touching and powerful story that promises to leave a lasting impact. Along the way, you'll uncover valuable lessons and heartwarming surprises that will inspire and uplift you. Stay tuned until the end to discover the unforgettable message we've prepared just for you. Let's dive in. The king's gleaming sword, sharpened for battle in foreign lands, lay ready and bright. Ravens croaked in anticipation of their feast, and wolves howled from distant hills. In the forests, wary peasants glimpsed a sight that filled them with awe. The exiled King Olaf had returned from the land of the Rus, determined to reclaim the throne of Norway. At his side stood his half-brother, Harald, a youth of remarkable strength despite his mere 16 years. As they marched, vagabonds and outcasts swelled their ranks, forming a modest army. They settled on a small hill at Stiklestad, where they soon heard the tumult of an approaching force led by Kulf Arneson. Once loyal to Olaf, Kulf now served the usurper king Canute the Great, who ruled over Denmark, England, and Norway. The armies clashed in a ferocious battle, invoking cries to Christ and Odin alike. Olaf's lines were overwhelmed. Blood and shattered bodies littered the field. Harald was gravely wounded, and Olaf himself was impaled, falling upon a stone and calling to God as his life ebbed away. Kulf Arneson sealed the tragic moment, slitting Olaf's throat. The battlefield was a grim scene, as Kulf's men hunted down the wounded. Yet young Harald, bleeding and barely alive, escaped into the wilderness. Stumbling through the dense forest, he found refuge in a humble peasant's hut where a kind family tended his wounds. Though grateful for their aid, Harald knew he could not linger. Winter's icy grip would soon render the mountains impassable. Donning a red cloak, he followed the peasant's son through hidden paths into the mountains, avoiding well-traveled roads and the lurking dangers of banditry. His journey brought him to Sweden, where he regrouped with other survivors from Stiklestad. Harald and his loyal warriors later sailed southward in dragon ships, leaving behind the familiar fjords of Scandinavia. Their destination was the land of the Rus, where Norse ancestors had once raided and settled. The Kievan Rus, a state built by the mingling of Norse adventurers, Slavs, and Finnic peoples, now served as a haven for Harald. He sought the court of Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise in Novgorod, bearing grim tidings of Olaf's death. Yaroslav, who had sheltered Olaf during his exile, welcomed Harald, but Harald's aspirations met resistance. Yaroslav declined his request to marry the Kievan princess Elizaveta, citing Harald's lack of wealth and power. Undeterred, Harald turned his gaze to lands far beyond Scandinavia, where riches and glory could still be won. Harald's journey eventually led him to the magnificent city of Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. Its grand domes, bustling forums, and shadowed streets teemed with life. Here, Harald and his warriors joined the elite Varangian Guard, Norse mercenaries renowned for their fierce loyalty and unmatched combat prowess. Under Emperor Michael IV, Harald fought valiantly against the Fatimid Caliphate, raiding pirate fleets with his men and conquering enemy-held territories. His reputation for strength and bravery grew, and his exploits became the stuff of legend. On one campaign, Harald accompanied an imperial delegation to Jerusalem, walking the sacred paths of the Holy Land. Amid the ruins and holy sites, he witnessed the rebuilding of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a gesture of fragile peace brokered between the Byzantines and the Fatimids. Through these trials, Harald honed his skills and gathered the wealth and renown he would one day use to claim the throne that had eluded him. Harald wielded his axe with deadly precision, cutting down the bandits who threatened their caravan before pausing to cleanse himself in the sacred waters of the River Jordan. Now in his 20s, he commanded the Varangian Guard with unyielding ferocity, his reputation growing with every campaign. Among his exploits was the legendary siege of a Sicilian city, where he and his men tunneled beneath the walls and slaughtered the garrison, securing victory. Harald's conquest yielded a vast treasure hoard, yet the Byzantine Empire was far from stable. In the gilded churches of Constantinople, prayers rose for salvation as Emperor Michael IV's health deteriorated. His body swelled grotesquely, and violent seizures left him increasingly frail. Before his death, he adopted his nephew, Michael V, as his son and heir, though whispers of the younger Michael's cunning and treachery abounded. Despite these tensions, the ailing emperor summoned Harald for one final campaign to crush a Bulgar revolt. Together, they devastated rebel strongholds and paraded a captured rebel king, mutilated and defeated, through the streets of Constantinople. Harald was hailed as the burner of the Bulgars, but the emperor's frailty soon claimed his life. Michael V's ascension marked a descent into paranoia and cruelty. Suspecting Harald's loyalty, the new emperor sent assassins, only for the Varangian leader to slaughter them in defiance. Michael's distrust extended even to his adoptive mother, Empress Zoe. He accused her of poisoning plots, humiliated her by cutting her hair, and exiled her to a nunnery. Outraged, the people of Constantinople revolted. Mobs besieged the palace, and Harald and his men joined the uprising, cutting down guards and leading the charge into the imperial quarters. Michael V was found cowering in a monastery, pleading for mercy. The sagas recount how Harald personally delivered the mob's justice. Dragging the young emperor before the city walls, he gouged out Michael's eyes with his dagger before the wailing crowd. The disgraced ruler was castrated and exiled to a monastery, where he soon perished. Order was restored with Empress Zoe's return to power, though rumors persisted that she harbored a lingering affection for Harald, despite marrying another man half her age. With Constantinople behind him, Harald turned his sights north. Norway's throne had passed to his nephew, King Magnus, a child guided by advisors whom Harald viewed as traitors to his house. Returning to Scandinavia after 15 years of exile, Harald brought with him immense wealth and an illustrious reputation. Yet Magnus' court, led by the old enemy Einar Thamberskelfer, resisted his ambitions. Denied a share of the kingdom, Harald allied with the Danish rebel Sven to claim Norway by force. Their campaign was merciless. Harald's dragon ships unleashed fire and death across Denmark, burning villages and enslaving the populace. The brutality of their raids was unmatched, leaving few survivors to recount the devastation. Yet Sven's betrayal threatened Harald's plans. The rebel Jarl attempted to assassinate Harald, but he escaped, ultimately securing a negotiated co-rule of Norway with Magnus. Tensions between the two kings simmered until Magnus' sudden death in 1047, leaving Harald as the sole ruler. Harald's reign was marked by relentless ambition and ruthless tactics. He suppressed dissent with violence, often resorting to treachery to eliminate rivals, including Einar Thamberskelfer. Even his former ally Finn Arneson witnessed Harald's cruelty firsthand when the king manipulated Finn's brother Kulf into a suicidal assault during a campaign. Despite these acts, Harald consolidated his power, earning the epithet Hardrada, or Hard Ruler. Harald's gaze extended beyond Norway, and he launched repeated campaigns against Denmark, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Yet, the protracted wars drained both kingdoms, forcing Harald and Sven to broker an uneasy peace. Back in Norway, Harald sought to solidify his legacy, composing poetry in his quieter moments while contemplating the extent of his conquests. Tales of distant Norsemen reaching North America and the mysterious edges of the world captured his imagination, though he himself ventured only as far as the icy northern seas. Of his journeys, it was said that Harald reached the very brink of the world, where the fog swallowed the horizon and the abyss beckoned. He returned from these treacherous voyages as the undisputed king of Norway, his rule cemented in blood, fire, and the enduring fear of his name. Harald Hardrada, having lived 50 eventful winters, was now a seasoned king whose past glories in war seemed like distant memories. But one day, his court was visited by an envoy representing Tostig Godwinson, a man whose ambitions would ignite a final, fateful campaign. Tostig, once the Earl of Northumbria, had been exiled after a failed reign marked by harshness and rebellion. His brother, Harald Godwinson, not only replaced him, but also ascended to the English throne after the childless King Edward's death. Consumed by jealousy and thirst for vengeance, Tostig implored Harald to invade England. He painted a vision of reclaiming Magnus' old claim to the English throne, with Harald ruling as the Viking King of England, and Tostig serving as his vassal. The prospect of conquest rekindled Harald's warrior spirit, and he began assembling an army. Dark omens haunted the king and his men as they prepared for war. One warrior dreamed of a battlefield strewn with their corpses, presided over by a witch riding a wolf, her beast devouring the fallen as she sang of Harald's doom. Undeterred, Harald's fleet, bearing nearly 10,000 warriors, sailed across the sea and landed on England's shores. Villages submitted quickly to the Viking invaders, but those that resisted, such as Skartaborg, were burned, their inhabitants slaughtered. Advancing inland, Harald met little resistance, as King Harald Godwin's son awaited an invasion in the south from another claimant to the English crown, William, Duke of Normandy. The Viking host moved steadily toward York, its ancient walls, and towers remnants of a Roman past. On September 20th, near the marshlands, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria led their forces to confront the invaders. The battle was brutal, but the Vikings overwhelmed the English, scattering their bodies across the damp grass. York soon capitulated, offering hostages as guarantees of loyalty to avoid further bloodshed. 5 days later, Harold's army marched to Stamford Bridge to secure the exchange of hostages. Leaving behind their mail armor in the unseasonable heat, they were caught unprepared when a massive dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Harald Godwin's son had marched 200 miles in just days with a great English army, arriving to confront the Vikings. Riders were dispatched to summon the remaining third of Harald's forces, but they were over an hour away. The English charged the bridge, where one Viking warrior held them at bay for a time, slaying dozens before he fell. Beyond the bridge, Harald rallied his men, forming a shield wall and preparing their spears and archers. Despite their lack of armor, he proclaimed their courage unmatched. The English cavalry charged, but the Viking line held firm. When the English infantry pressed in, the shield wall repulsed them, prompting a brief English retreat. Yet when the Vikings pursued, the English turned and attacked, exploiting gaps in their ranks. Amid the chaos, blood soaked the battlefield as limbs and lives were torn away. Harald, a towering figure of fury, carved through his enemies with a sword said to be unstoppable. But even his strength could not defy fate. An arrow pierced his throat, and the great king Harald Hardrada fell. His loyal men, refusing to surrender, fought to the last, forming a corpse ring around their fallen king. Reinforcements from the Viking camp arrived too late to change the tide. Tostig met his end with an arrow to his eye, and only a few battered ships carried survivors back to Norway. The English, bloodied and weary, gathered their dead and tended their wounds, marking the end of one of the last great Viking invasions of England. Harold's dreams of conquest were buried with him, leaving a legacy of both glory and tragedy, etched into the annals of history. Just 3 days after King Harald Godwinson's victory at Stamford Bridge, England faced a new and even greater threat. William, Duke of Normandy, landed on English shores with a formidable army of thousands. The exhausted English forces, still recovering from their northern triumph, hastened south to meet this fresh invasion. At the decisive Battle of Hastings, the Normans shattered the English lines. King Harald Godwin's son fell in battle, marking the end of the Anglo-Saxon era. With Harold's death, William claimed the throne, ushering in a transformative age. The old aristocracy was cast out, rebels were ruthlessly suppressed, and a new order took hold. Norman castles, grand and imposing, rose across the land, symbols of the crown's growing strength. England's ties to continental Europe deepened, while its vulnerability to Scandinavian raids gradually diminished. Even Sven of Denmark, twice attempting to invade England, was met with failure. As for Harald Hardrada, his body was returned to Norway, where his sons inherited the throne. His legacy lived on in song and saga, remembered as a figure both brutal and brave, greedy yet wise, a man who embodied the final echoes of a fierce and untamed age. Harald's death marked the close of the Viking era, the last wild howl of a world that was giving way to the tides of change. This era-shaping narrative brings us full circle, created by the dedicated team behind History Dose. From painstaking research to detailed artwork and editing, it represents hundreds of hours of passion and effort. If you'd like to support our work and enjoy exclusive content, bonus videos, voting on new topics, and more, consider joining us on Patreon for as little as $1. Your support keeps the stories alive. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. If you found this story interesting and meaningful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any exciting content coming up. Leave a comment to share your thoughts. We're eager to hear from you. See you in the upcoming videos with more unique and meaningful stories. Stay with us.